"Joseph, I will not leave you. If you go to Carthage, I will go with you even to death." These are not the words of a man seeking glory, nor are they the words of someone blind to the reality of what was waiting in the shadows of that Illinois summer. They were spoken by Hiram Smith in late June of 1844, as the humid air hung heavy over the Mississippi River and the city of Nauvoo trembled under the threat of impending war. The governor of the state had demanded that Joseph Smith surrender himself to face charges in Carthage, a town that had become a literal gathering place for those who had sworn to see the prophet's blood spilled. Joseph knew the danger. He had no illusions about what lay beyond the safety of Nauvoo's municipal borders. He had looked into the future and seen the end, and in a final, desperate act of protective love, he turned to his older brother, Hiram, the patriarch of the church, and pleaded with him to stay behind. Joseph begged him to take his family, to escape to the west, to preserve his life so that the leadership of the restoration would have an anchor when the storm finally hit. But Hiram refused the exit. You must understand that Hiram was not the primary target of the state's legal machinery, nor was he the charismatic figurehead whom the political factions and the apostates most desperately wanted to destroy. Had Hiram remained in Nauvoo, he almost certainly would have lived. He had a wife, Mary Fielding, and young children who desperately needed him. He had every practical, theological, and familial reason to stay behind and claim the safety of his own home. He could have excused himself without a shred of dishonor, and no one would have questioned his devotion. Yet, looking into the eyes of his younger brother, Hiram made a choice that defied the basic human instinct of self-preservation. He chose solidarity over safety. He chose to walk straight into the mouth of the wolf because his covenant was not just with a movement or an abstract set of principles, but with a person, a brother, and a divine assignment. He would not let Joseph stand alone in the hour of his greatest trial. You are listening to these words today because you know exactly what it feels like to stand at the edge of your own Carthage, looking over your shoulder, hoping against hope that someone will choose to stand with you. You have lived through seasons where the winds of adversity began to howl, where your reputation, your stability, or your peace of mind was under direct assault, and when you reached out your hands to find the allies who had promised to be there, you found only empty air. You have known the cold, hollow ache of watching people who smiled in your seasons of prosperity suddenly find convenient excuses to slip away when the cost of association became too high. You have asked yourself, in the quiet, painful corners of your soul, why you always seem to be the one who has to play the hero, why you are always the one who has to carry the heaviest end of the cross, and why no one has ever stepped forward to be a Hiram for you. This sense of isolation is not a random accident of your personality, nor is it a sign that you have failed to build meaningful relationships. It is a precise, painful pattern that is woven into the very fabric of the chosen soul's journey. When you are called by God to carry something unusual, something that disrupts the comfortable status quo of the world around you, you will quickly discover that most people are only willing to walk with you as long as the path is paved with social approval and easy progress. The moment your path bends toward the wilderness, the moment it requires you to stand against the current of public opinion or to face trials that demand real sacrifice, the crowd will thin out until you are left standing with only your own shadow. This is the great filter of spiritual preparation, the lonely space where your true character is forged and where the depth of your own devotion is tested to its absolute limit. In these seasons of profound isolation, the enemy of your soul will always come to whisper his most destructive lies. He will tell you that the emptiness around you is proof of your own unworthiness. He will whisper that if you were truly loved by God, if your calling were genuine, you would not have to fight these battles in solitude. The voice of betrayal will try to convince you that your spiritual intensity, your sensitivity, and your refusal to compromise are actually defects that drive people away, leaving you isolated as a punishment for your own rigidity. The enemy wants you to internalize the silence of those who abandoned you as a final, definitive verdict on your value. He wants you to believe that your Carthage will be your final resting place, and that you will go down in defeat without a single witness to testify of your integrity or to validate the suffering you have endured. But we must look past the lies of the enemy and look directly at the historical anchor of Hiram and Joseph to understand what is truly happening in your life right now. To appreciate the magnitude of Hiram's loyalty, you have to look back at the decades of shared history that preceded that fateful ride to Carthage jail. Hiram was nearly 6 years older than Joseph. He had watched his younger brother grow from a frail, limping child into a prophet of God. When Joseph was just a boy of 7, suffering through the agonizing pain of experimental bone surgery on his leg without anesthesia, it was Hiram who sat by his bedside, holding that leg for days and nights, weeping with him, refusing to leave his side. When Joseph came out of the sacred grove with a testimony that shook the foundations of his community, and the ministers and neighbors mocked and derided him, Hiram did not join the skeptics. He listened, he believed, and he shielded his younger brother from the anger of a world that refused to understand him. Throughout the entire timeline of the restoration, Hiram was the quiet, immovable pillar that held up the structure while Joseph bore the brunt of the public lightning. When the first pages of the Book of Mormon were being translated, when the church was being organized, when the saints were being driven from state to state, Hiram was there, never demanding the spotlight, never seeking to usurp the authority of his brother, but constantly providing the emotional and spiritual ballast that kept the entire work from capsizing. When Joseph was imprisoned in the dark, freezing cellar of Liberty Jail during the winter of 1838 and 1839, Hiram was right there with him, sharing the same moldy food, breathing the same stagnant air, and suffering the same indignity. They were bound together not just by ties of blood, but by a shared vision of eternity that made the temporary trials of this life seem small by comparison. It was this lifetime of quiet, unyielding integrity that drew the attention of heaven itself. In January of 1841, through a revelation now recorded as Section 124 of the Doctrine and Covenants, the Lord spoke of Hiram in words that should pierce the heart of anyone who has ever longed for a true friend. The Lord declared, "Blessed is my servant Hiram Smith. For I, the Lord, love him because of the integrity of his heart, and because he loveth that which is right before me." Notice that the Lord did not praise Hiram for his eloquence, his military prowess, or his administrative genius. He praised him for the integrity of his heart. The word integrity comes from the Latin word integer, which means whole, complete, or undivided. Hiram's heart was not divided between his own self-interest and his covenant. He was whole. He was a man who loved what was right so deeply that the threat of death could not create a single crack in his devotion. When you understand the depth of Hiram's integrity, you begin to understand the sheer weight of what happened on the road to Carthage on June 24, 1844. As they rode toward the jail, knowing that they were walking into a trap, Hiram stopped and turned to his family. He knew he would never see his home again. He took up the Book of Mormon and turned to the Book of Ether, reading aloud the words of Moroni, who was also a man who had been left entirely alone to finish his work. Hiram read, "And now I, Moroni, bid farewell unto the Gentiles, yea, and also unto my brethren whom I love, until we shall meet before the judgment seat of Christ, where all men shall know that my garments are not spotted with your blood." He folded down the corner of that page, a physical mark of his departure, a quiet testament that he was fully aware of the price he was about to pay, and that he was paying it willingly. He did not go to Carthage as a victim of circumstance. He went as an agent of covenant love. When the mob finally stormed the upstairs room of Carthage jail on the afternoon of June 27th, it was Hiram who was struck first by a ball fired through the door. As he fell to the floor, his last words were not a cry of fear or a lament for his own life. He looked at his brother and said, "I am a dead man." Even in the moment of his death, his primary concern was to alert Joseph, to give him whatever warning he could, to stand as a shield for him until his very last breath. Joseph, in his grief, cried out, "Oh, dear brother Hiram," as the bullets began to fly around him. In their death, they were not divided. The blood of the prophet and the blood of the patriarch mingled on the floor of that room, sealing a testimony that had been written through decades of shared sacrifice, shared sorrow, and shared glory. This is not just a beautiful, tragic story from the pages of history. This is the eternal template of the covenant relationship, and it is the exact mirror through which you must look to understand your own present suffering. The question you must ask yourself is this: why has God allowed you to experience the pain of standing alone if this is the kind of loyalty that heaven values? The answer is both heavy and glorious. If you have been left to face your trials without a Hiram by your side, It is because God is testing the integrity of your own heart in the absolute vacuum of human support. It is easy to be loyal when you are surrounded by a community of believers who applaud your faith. It is easy to keep your covenants when you have a partner who matches your devotion step for step. But the true measure of your spiritual weight is only revealed when you are called to stand entirely alone, with no one watching, no one cheering, and no one supporting you. When God strips away your human crutches, He is not punishing you. He is inviting you into a higher level of spiritual maturity. He is teaching you that your connection to Him must be direct, unmediated, and absolute. If your faith depends on the presence of a supportive friend, then your faith is only as strong as that friend's human weakness. But if you can stand in the quiet of your own lonely room, facing the wolves of doubt, fear, and betrayal, and still say, "I know whom I have trusted," then you have developed a spiritual bone density that cannot be shattered by any earthly storm. You are learning to find your anchor not in the changing winds of human loyalty, but in the immovable rock of Christ. Furthermore, you must realize that if you have searched in vain for someone to stand with you in your darkest hours, it may be because God is preparing you to become that person for someone else. The world is filled with fragile, hurting souls who are desperately searching for a true friend, a mentor, an anchor who possesses the rare, costly spiritual capital required to stand firm when the world is shaking. But God cannot trust a shallow, untested heart with the custody of another person's destiny. He cannot make you a shield for others until you have first learned to stand under the fire yourself. He has to take you through the agonizing loneliness of your own Carthage so that you will know exactly what betrayal feels like, so that you will understand the preciousness of loyalty, and so that you will never, ever take a covenant lightly. Your isolation is the school of the patriarch. It is the training ground where you are being cured of the need for human validation. When you no longer require the applause of the crowd or the constant reassurance of your peers to keep moving forward, you become dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. You become a person who cannot be bought, cannot be intimidated, and cannot be discouraged. You become like Hiram, a soul of undivided integrity, a pillar of quiet strength who is capable of standing in the gap for others when they are too weak to stand for themselves. Your present loneliness is not your destination. It is the price of admission for a calling that will require you to be a shelter for many who are currently lost in the storm. Therefore, you must stop looking back at the people who walked away from you with bitterness or regret. They did not have the capacity to go where you are going. Their departure was not a tragedy. It was a necessary boundary line drawn by the hand of God to protect your destiny from being compromised by their instability. If they had stayed, they would have tried to pull you back into the safety of the valley when God was calling you to climb the mountain. Release them. Let go of the resentment that is quiet burning in your chest because they did not have the courage to ride to Carthage with you. Wish them well, but turn your eyes forward, toward the work that is still waiting to be done, and toward the sovereign God who has never, for a single fraction of a second, turned His back on you. The heavens are watching you right now. They are watching to see if you will allow the pain of your isolation to sour into cynicism, or if you will allow it to refine you into a vessel of pure, golden integrity. They are watching to see if you will shrink from your assignment because you have to walk it in solitude, or if you will step forward with the same quiet, steady resolve that filled the heart of Hiram Smith as he rode toward his death. You are not forgotten. Your tears are not lost in the dust of your road. Every moment of silent endurance, every choice to remain faithful when no one was there to witness your struggle, is being recorded in the books of eternity as a testament to the integrity of your heart. Let us rise above the self-pity that threatens to drown your calling. Let us cast off the expectation that your path must be easy and comfortable to be approved of God. You are a chosen soul called to carry a weight that requires a different kind of strength, a different kind of endurance. Step into the identity of the witness. Step into the legacy of the brother who would not run, the sister who would not compromise, the disciple who would not deny the truth even when the price was everything. Align your heart with the unbroken, undivided devotion of the heavens, and watch as the Lord Himself steps into the empty space beside you, filling your solitude with a presence that is sweeter, stronger, and more real than any human companionship could ever be. I am grateful for those who have stood with me. I release bitterness toward those who did not. And I become for others the person I needed someone to be for me. I declare that my waiting is not my wasting, and my isolation is not my abandonment. I am being formed in the quiet spaces for a work that will endure long after the storms of this life have passed. My character is catching up to my calling, and the integrity of my heart is being sealed in the fire of my private trials. I will not look back with regret on the alliances that were broken, nor will I look forward with fear at the battles that lie ahead. I am anchored in the covenant, bound to the truth, and sustained by the direct presence of the living God. I will stand, I will endure, and I will become the pillar of strength that heaven can trust to hold up the weak and shield the innocent. The harvest of my faithfulness is sure, and I step forward into my destiny with an undivided heart.